we are back today with another new speaker. Um, Her name is Swara Patel, and she's a very special speaker. Why do I say she's so special? You know, because she started a small dream when she was way younger, like 16 years old, and she actually moved it forward to make a movement out of it. Also, we have always not taken small things seriously. That small smile that can make someone's day, or that small gesture which can improve someone's life. Small things actually lead to big movements, and that's what we talk about with Swara Patel today. So, Swara is the founder and the president of the Period Society, a non-profit society that began at when she was 16 years old. It was based on her personal experiences with the menstrual taboo and interactions with menstruators from marginal communities who struggle to access basic period products. And she is currently a rising freshman from McLeod Honors College in New York. She's a student of science and humanities on a pre medical track. She hopes to expand and amplify the Period Society as a platform for the current generation in India and put a period to this stigma surrounding the menstrual and reproductive health. Let us welcome Swara to our platform. And it is amazing that you agreed to speak to us. Swara, tell us about yourself. How did you land up with a period society at such a young age?
Sure. And Pagan, thank you so much for having me today. And the opportunity to share the story, which means so much to me, is definitely really invaluable. And I think just talking about periods and menstruation and when my personal journey began, I think it goes way back to the third grade when I was sitting in a bus with a bunch of friends coming back from a birthday party, and someone said the word period in a very hushed whisper, and I didn't know what it meant. And I asked them aloud, "What is a period?" And everyone just told me that it's something that's not appropriate to say in public and that I should lower my voice
Yeah,
when speaking about it.
yeah.
And I was in the seventh grade when I got my first period, and no one explained the biology behind menstruation to me. And I was
Mm-hmm.
just told that I'm impure when I'm menstruating. I'm not supposed to go to the temple. I'm not supposed to touch cooked food. And I'm not supposed to engage in any sort of religious or cultural celebration. And
Mm-hmm.
even though I grew up in a family of healthcare professionals, it was really difficult for me to talk about my periods or my period cramps in front of my dad, who's a doctor himself. And I think the turning point for me truly was when I was volunteering at the Tata Memorial Hospital during one of my summers. And I met a woman who told me that she exhausted all of her personal savings paying for her son's cancer treatment. So she couldn't purchase period products for herself. So she used a piece of cloth every month. And she was telling me about how difficult it was for her to just carry on with her daily life when she had her periods. And the only time I've been in a situation like that is maybe when I'm out at a restaurant with friends and none of us have a pad on us, and I just
Yeah,
unexpectedly get my periods and I might have to use toilet paper. But to imagine that people like go through menstruation their entire life this way was
yeah.
something that just really shook me. And upon doing more research, I found out that an overwhelming majority of menstruators in India can't access period products, and this leads to girls
Mm.
dropping out of school. And so many people just have this negative perception of menstruation, and they think it's
Absolutely.
something that's dirty. And the taboo is just so widespread across every section of society that I felt that I had to do something about it, because I feel that a period should only
Mm-hmm.
put a full stop to a sentence and not to someone's potential.
Yeah,
And everyone deserves to experience their period with dignity and treat it as a normal biological process.
right.
So I came up with this idea of basically holding menstrual hygiene education sessions to explain what periods are to people so that once they understand the biology behind menstruation, they begin to normalize it, and also to distribute period products, especially reusable ones, to people who can't otherwise afford them.
That's amazing. I know all of us, especially, of course, girls, have faced this situation in one way or the other. So, all the girls and the women who are watching us tonight, if you have faced such a situation, please put a yes in the comment so that we know that, we are not the only ones facing it. And just to share with you a very interesting story, I still remember when I was in the fifth standard and one of my friends in school got periods. She stopped coming for a week just because there was no education around this. She thought she was suffering from blood cancer. So it sounds hilarious now, but it was super traumatizing to her when she was way younger. So kudos to you. It's a very pertinent topic to pick up. But what amazes me that in third grade, when people are really looking at PUBGs and YouTubes and Instagrams, you were actually worrying about a social cause in the country per se. you know Tell me another thing. You being so young, how did you start your baby steps towards setting out this change? And did you ever think that this will never happen, and it's too difficult to kind of change people's ways of thinking?
So I think the baby steps of change, as a charity, begins at home. For me, it definitely began at home, because before I went out and I preached to people about how they should normalize periods or how menstruation's a normal process, I think my first battle was within the household, because I remember that since I was in the seventh grade, every time there was Ganesh Chaturthi and I got my periods, like there would be a whole argument at home about me wanting to go out and visit people, and my mom telling me that it's not okay to do so because like I'm impure and I'm just shedding bad energy in those days. So I feel like changing those attitudes within my house and even sort of normalizing discussing periods with my dad was something that I did. And I told him that you're a healthcare professional and you know that this is a perfectly normal biological process. And if anything, it's
Yeah.
just a sign that I'm healthy. And to get my parents talking about periods normally with me and, just making the word something that was completely normal and that I could bring up at the dinner table at our house was my first baby step. But talking about
Mm-hmm.
going out into communities and making a change and, helping
Mm-hmm.
them access period products or sort of look at periods differently was something that I really questioned myself accomplishing at
Mm-hmm.
the age of 16, because I felt that at the end of the day, people might think that I'm a kid or, my age might disengage my worth.
Yeah.
But I definitely feel that when I had interacted with people and I saw the need for this conversation and for this initiative, that sort of, just really motivated me to begin my initiative and made me realize that this is something worthwhile and important. And I decided to sort of destigmatize failure and, just give it a shot. And I think my parents, especially my dad, was really supportive and he, helped me set everything up. Advised me
Yes.
about how to like contact people. He
Mm-hmm.
found me a school to host our first session at, and
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of it was kind of thinking about how I could make a change in these communities in the long term. So instead of just going in one time to a school and giving them, a pack of pads which would last for a month, I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to make a difference to them in the long term. So I collaborated with a youth-run enterprise called Enactus at HR College, which makes reusable cloth pads.
Right.
And they're really good in the sense that they last for up to 3 years of use properly, and
Wow.
they eliminate plastic waste in these communities. So it's good for the environment too. And I think that just being able to think through everything and also having a team which initially comprised of my friends and fellow high school students made me feel that I'm not alone and that there are people who will be willing to walk like every step of the journey with me. And I feel that really emphasizing on collaboration right since the beginning and
Right.
mobilizing other people to work in this cause with me was something that really turned out well for us.
Right. So I hear you. What you're saying is the baby steps actually begin at home. So basically, include people who will support you, including your family, your friends who believe in your cause, then step out and collaborate with people who are already doing something around it or have a voice, so that it becomes easier for you to actually amplify the voice instead of starting anew. So amazing, because many a times when we start alone, it's very scary. It feels very challenging to really go out there. And sometimes, because we feel our voices will not be heard as well. So tell me one thing. I know you started out with 4 people and now you have ended up with 40 people in your organization. How was the journey for you? What were the challenges and how did you face that really?
I think initially there were two main challenges that confronted me. One was my age, and the other was the societal taboo surrounding periods. And I feel that for me to gain that sort of confidence to talk about periods publicly, as I mentioned, I had to start doing it at home. And I think I definitely put a lot of thought into how I wanted to sort of carry out my messaging and present it to people who might initially be hostile towards my cause. And I think people often perceive menstruation as a girl thing. So
Yeah,
I really wanted to get across a message that it's a societal problem, because at the end of the day, it's leading to, women and girls dropping out of school. And
yeah,
when women and girls like don't participate completely in a society, that just like sort of holds you back from progressing. And I think reproductive health is an essential part of healthcare, and you cannot sort of think about your well-being without including reproductive health.
yeah.
And just the right to have an education and live your life with dignity is a human right. So I decided to sort of spread my message or talk about my cause as a human rights issue, rather
Hmm.
than just a girl thing the way we normally perceive it in society.
Right.
And about my age, I feel that initially it definitely held me back from beginning this for a couple of months. But the more that I thought about it, I felt that my age could even be an advantage, because we talked about how we began with 4 people and we are now a team of 40 plus students. And I feel that almost all of the credit for that really goes to social media, because as someone who's young, you're constantly on social media, you know how to use
Yeah,
different apps and sort of
yeah.
spread the word about your initiative, and you can reach people regardless of their geographic location. So we have team members from all around the world, and that's simply because as a Gen Z led platform, I feel that we really know how to communicate and reach out to other young people and engage them on social media to raise awareness about our cause. And I feel that in the beginning, it was difficult to find people who are willing to hold our first few sessions with us.
Right.
But I think reaching out to Enactus, which is also a completely youth run organization, was
Hmm.
really beneficial for us, because I feel that they somewhat knew where we were coming from, because they're run by students as well. And they really
Right.
wouldn't hold the sort of mindset that because you're young, you can't make a change, or you can't really go out and start a conversation, because they were already doing this as students themselves, and they knew
Yeah.
that we had the power to ignite this conversation. So I feel that really looking out for like-minded people and organizations to collaborate with in the beginning helped out, because once we had our first couple sessions and people knew about our work, that definitely built our credibility. And from then on, things definitely got a lot more easier in terms of reaching out and like having new chapters and conducting further sessions, because we already have a record
Right.
of like doing this work and doing it
Right.
properly, and
Right.
implementing change in communities.
So then I also understand from your journey, basically, it is a lot about connecting with people who have like vision and are like minded. And always, I loved this aspect, what you mentioned, Swara. And I think this is very relatable to any change that each one of us is trying to make. Is when you're looking at something which you don't like and you want to change it, you may want to look at it from a bigger picture, like, not limiting menstrual health to female hygiene only, but moving it to a bigger picture of human rights, because it leads to a lot of dropouts from school. It also will be changed if the men participate effectively in this whole movement. So you have to be really inclusive and include all of it. Plus social media is super powerful. So yes, guys, if you use positively, you can see how Swara's team has really connected to people all over the world. I know that they have chapters across the world, which is amazing. And the power of social media cannot be underrated. So I have Nishat saying menstruation or menopause often has been a great taboo aspect in our societies. Yes, it has been a great taboo in our societies. So, Swara, what is the kind of work your organization does? It'll be interesting for us to understand that apart from just helping the women understand about menstrual hygiene, what is it that you also look at? And how did you think of scaling it up and moving it ahead and transforming this from an idea to a movement, actually?
So the primary work that you mentioned, like basically a foundation, is conducting menstrual hygiene education sessions and distributing period products, sustainable or not, depending on the water assessment that we conduct of the areas that we're working in. But rather than something that I was doing individually, I really wanted this to be a platform for Gen Z to sort of, pioneer conversations about
Yeah,
periods and like make their own communities more period positive. So within India, we came up with a chapter model so that students could access all of our resources, our content. We could probably help them with fundraising or provide them with grants so they could take our programs and implement them within their own community, so that we aren't geographically restricted to Mumbai, where I'm based from.
yeah,
And talking about abroad, we have global initiatives where we spread awareness about our work and like hold dialogues about menstruation. But we also plan to have like an upcoming mentorship program where we help students outside of India who best understand their own communities about how they can take the menstrual movement forward within their communities, and begin their own initiatives to help out menstruators within their regions and conduct service. So I feel that we're definitely an advocacy platform as much as we do
yeah,
on ground work. And
right,
a large part of the work and the way we've expanded is definitely getting Gen Z to take the lead for the menstrual movement, because I know that this generation is really passionate about creating this change, and rather than letting someone else like speak up for issues that they care
right.
about or someone else to implement change, they're ready to take things in their own hands. And I just wanted my nonprofit to be a platform for them to have the resources to do so.
Right. So, connect with people to speak up at different platforms is a very key thing. So, if we have a change that we want to bring about, and if we just keep it to ourselves, thinking that people will copy our idea or we should not put it out, it's not going to work. You have to speak about it, connect to people, decentralize. I think this is something which I observed in Swara's organization. Her organization is completely decentralized, so there is no one leader in it. You can see leaders in different chapters, and that's what gives them the accountability to take the change in their hands and to make it happen. Guys, I want to encourage you all to please ask questions. We may not have the right answers, but I see that a positive journey, and of course going forwards, I know that Swara is going to make big name outside for her and also bring about that particular change. If you've had some kind of a change that you wanted to make, please let us know about it. Put them in the comments. So, Swara, moving to the next questions. If somebody is looking at a topic right now, or somebody feels very passionately about changing that aspect in the community, what is the first step that person should do? What is your suggestion on that?
I feel that if there's a taboo or a stigma that you wish to change in a community, um, I think the first step is really to understand, to sort of investigate, the roots of where this taboo like began from. Why do people hold these beliefs, and sort of understand where the taboo comes from, and then sort of present your own
Right.
rationale. So, for example, about like menstruation, I like decided to understand why
Hmm.
people thought that it was something that was dirty, and
Yeah.
there are a lot of different reasons, but it's often that one of them is that anything related to like reproductive health like tends to be really sexualized in society, or just the
Hmm.
kind of messaging that we've had all along. Even with one of India's leading sanitary napkin brands was to be called whispers, like really just promotes the
Exactly.
idea that
I've
this is a
always
hush hush
thought that.
topic.
I've
Yeah.
always thought that it's been so funny that you have a brand that calls itself Whisper. Yeah, yeah. Please go
So
on. Yeah,
I feel that understand where the taboo comes from and try to understand the community. Don't like go in and impose your views on them. Understand why they hold these beliefs. It's often that they aren't exposed to these ideas about menstruation, because
yeah,
so many schools in India, including my own school, which was supposed to be like a top ranked private school, like never talked to us about periods till I came in the 10th grade, and by then everyone started menstruating, and it was just sort of in it was integrated into us, like that periods are something that are normal. You should be really you should be speaking about
yeah,
periods in a hush hush tone. And we used to stuff our pads into our uniforms pockets when we used to walk
yeah,
around the corridor to change a pad.
yeah.
So I feel that try to understand why the taboo begin, or why that stigma persists. And once we understand it, I feel that
Hmm.
it'll be easier for you to sort of come up with a solution to address the problem by the roots. So
Yeah.
I think definitely before you take any sort of action, do your research.
So I think this is a very relevant point because a lot of us, when we have to change something, we directly go into the action mode, where we are trying to refute the idea or thought and not understanding properly that a lot of belief systems are very deep rooted since a very long time. So I think this is a very pertinent aspect that probably step into the shoes, try to understand from their perspective, from what they come from and why are they saying that, what's making them say that. Yeah, so probably the first steps towards making that change is step onto that shoes and understand why that stigma stays around it, and then ask, what else can I do here that people have not even imagined or thought about. Swara, that's a very great share. I also wanted to ask you that I did go through your YouTube videos and I see that you have a lot of interaction with young girls in school when you're training them about the anatomy of female reproductive system and explaining to them what is your experience of what they very open to understanding it, or is it a challenging, the language, is that easy for you? How do you really reach across, relate to them, because they may just tell you you can afford everything and we are poor, we can't afford things. And so how do you get on the same wavelength with them?
So I think when I go and especially with like younger girls, I definitely try to establish a connection. And I'm 18 right now, so I tell them that I'm really close to you in age. So this is
Yeah,
supposed to be an open conversation. I'm not here to lecture you about anything, or teach you something. I'm just here to interact with you and talk to you about something that matters to me and should matter to you as well. And I try to begin by understanding them, and I ask them questions about when you started menstruating, were you told at home not to worship, not to touch the pickle jar? Do you openly talk about periods with your family, with your friends? And just when they open up about their own experiences, I think that sort of helps them to see the menstrual taboo and how it's like present in their own lives. And I feel that in the beginning, a lot of them are definitely really shy because they've always grown up like talking about periods in a very hushed tone.
yeah,
But I think once I began explaining the biology behind menstruation to them, I got a lot of questions about basic things such as, are cramps normal? Um, like is period, what is period blood? Is it something that is dirty?
yeah.
When should I see a doctor? Is this much of bleeding normal? And I
Hmm.
think really when I'm talking to them, even though they might have been taught the taboo at home, I think the great thing about like working with young kids is that they're very receptive to new information,
Hmm.
and they're willing to make change. They're willing to hear what you have to say, and
Hmm.
they definitely they're curious. They question a lot, and once they start opening up to me with questions and sort of learning or exploring the topic by themselves, I
Hmm.
feel that by the end of the session, like if they haven't like completely been comfortable like talking about periods, they
Hmm.
definitely like sort of looked at it with a new viewpoint, and they'll probably go home. They might try to talk to their parents about it, or at least going forward in the future, like they'll decide to talk to their kids about menstruation, know that it's not something to be ashamed about. So I feel that it's definitely really nice to talk to young kids about menstruation, because that's when they're receptive. And I think schools should take up the initiatives rather than non-profits like us doing it, because
Yeah.
schools like where we get a lot of our information from. And just because I didn't learn about menstruation in school, and at home, I sort of missed out on that information. And
Yeah.
I thought it was something that wasn't important enough, because otherwise, obviously, I'd be taught about
Yeah.
it in a biology class or something.
Yeah. True, true, true. So some of the life skills need to come through school, but if they don't come, and if you see that, you go and make that change. So Reena says, yes, it's very important to teach our children, both girls and boys, that it's a normal biological thing and not a taboo. And change should begin at home. So I hope that every parent watching this talk will take that bit and make that change in their children's life, where they go to their son as well as a daughter and talk to them about menstruation, which is a normal biological function, rather than using hushes around it, really. So this is an amazing share. I also have a question, where, if a teenager is looking at starting an NGO, it sounds super complex and not so doable. What's your recommendation for them? What's your experience been in that field? Was it easy? Was it difficult? You need a lawyer, or you can just do it?
So I feel that something that you definitely need, like beginning any initiative, and I feel at any point of time, is like just um, don't be ashamed of asking for mentorship. Like try to get as much mentorship as
Yeah,
you can, because um, like troubleshooting your problems with other people, like putting your ideas with other people, like the
yeah,
sort of loopholes that adults in my life pointed out to me, or I reached out to activists at my high school, or students who are already involved in nonprofits, and just speaking to them, I think I got so much of an insight, but also like felt that I wasn't the only one doing this, because now I knew about other people who'd done these things as students. I'd learned from their
mm-hmm.
mistakes, I'd learned from their experiences. They had advice to provide me. And rather than just like, going in with my own perspective, I saw what my initiative was like from the viewpoint of other people. And about getting registered, I don't
Mm-hmm.
think that is absolutely necessary. There are a lot of ways that you can
Right,
get around it. So
right.
my family has a trust for my grandfather, and we operate as an initiative of that trust in India. So we're able to receive donations to buy pads in India
Mm-hmm.
via the trust. Or I feel that even collaborating with other existing NGOs or entities is a great way for you to
Yeah,
begin your own initiative. And I also
right.
know a lot of other students who run initiatives which are non-registered. So I feel
Mm-hmm.
like definitely reach out to adults, or friends, or people you trust, or people you can look up to for mentorship. And I feel that that'll definitely be an amazing resource for you as you begin your
Yeah.
own initiative.
So this is amazing. So basically what I hear is, don't wait for everything to become perfect for you before you can start. Just get started, and everything will fall in place. The second, what she said, and which is so important, is don't be shy to ask for help, okay, or ask for a mentorship. There is always someone out there who will believe and trust you, depending on how much you trust your cause and how much you believe yourself. And so don't shy away from asking for mentorship. And when you have that mentorship, please never give up. Just keep going and keep going, and you will meet people on the way. So, Swara, we come to the topic of our discussion today, which talks about 5 ways to make that difference to the community. And I want to ask you, I know you and me may not be experts in this, but I can see that you have a lot of experience in this transformation. So I want to know, based on your experience, what are the 5 steps that one can take in order to make that difference in the community?
So, just based on personal experience, I
Yes.
feel the first step is definitely to question if there's something that a community has been following, be it a social norm, a practice, a rule, and that doesn't sit right with you, and you feel uncomfortable following it. There's no rationale, and they just ask you to blindly follow it, almost like a superstition, or
Yeah.
there's something that you feel that needs to be changed. Don't be afraid to question. Definitely be curious, ask questions, try to understand why is it in place, is it fair, does it align with your personal belief system, does it do good for society. And I feel that with the menstrual taboo, like I've been here for 16, 18 years, but
Yeah.
this taboo's like been there for thousands of years, but I don't think that really, validates it or makes it something that's beneficial to society. So don't
Mm.
be afraid to question, or don't be afraid to just speak out against existing institutions. Then the second step is definitely to understand the community that you're working with. As I
Yeah.
mentioned earlier, like they say that like when you want to work with a community, you need to first like shut up and listen and like understand where they're coming from. Like don't go in there thinking that you know everything, and don't go to like a marginalized or an underserved community like thinking that you're an authority or a savior.
Yeah.
Really try to understand them, understand why they hold these belief systems, and understand that even though the menstrual taboo, like of course like a lot of us don't agree with it, they've it's been a part of their culture and religions. Like don't really belittle or shame them for holding it, but rather like
Yeah.
look at a way you can reform that belief system, or sort of allow them to like dissociate from it.
Mm.
And definitely listen to their needs. Like even
Mm.
personally, like when I conduct a session, like I have to make sure that the community like wants the reusable cloth pads that we're trying to distribute, because if they don't have access to water supply, or they live in an area where there's like low rainfall, it's really difficult
Yeah.
for them to manage the pads
Yeah.
and they're of no use. So
Mm.
really try to understand where these communities are coming from,
Mm.
and
Mm.
reduce the cycle of dependency. So as I said, like don't
Mm.
go into a community thinking that you're a savior. Like try to give them the power to make the change and reduce the cycle of dependency within these communities, so that eventually they don't have to depend on you. So we're trying to come up like with our own digital advocacy campaign called Peelit Shiksha, where we reach out to BMC schools to
Mm.
implement a better menstrual health curriculum, but really make
Mm.
sure that nonprofits like us don't have to do this work, and it's something that's a part of society. And like parents take up this
Amazing. Yeah.
conversation, schools take up this conversation, and even a great thing about partnering with Enactus is that the cloth pads that they provide us with are stitched by women in rural Maharashtra. So this really reduces the cycle of
Amazing.
dependency within these communities that
Yeah.
we aim to serve, and it
Mm.
gives them financial independence and the ability to sort of take control of their own lives. And
Mm.
I think that is a really sustainable way of making change.
Yeah.
The fourth step is make sure that the communities you work with have a sense of agency. Don't go in there trying to impose your beliefs and your values on them. um, Personally, I think my job is just to go in there and talk to them about the menstrual taboo, the biology behind menstruation. But it's
Mm.
never to go in there and tell them that like your beliefs are wrong, you guys are wrong, but you know
Mm.
everything that your culture or your religion says is wrong. It's just to
Mm.
tell them that menstruation is a normal biological process. This is why it
Mm.
occurs. And
Mm.
once they have that information,
Mm.
they're empowered to make the choice to break away from
Mm.
these beliefs themselves. And I think
Mm.
that's a really organic way of making change, rather than me coming in and imposing my beliefs,
Mm.
which, if anything, would only alienate that community right since the
Mm.
beginning.
Mm.
And the fifth is to engage with those communities. Don't, you know,
Mm.
be in a community like for a
And yeah.
one time initiative or a one time speech. Like try to make sure that you sort of have some sustainable model of change. So we try to
Mm.
provide sanitary napkins in the long term, and then like reach out to these communities for feedback after a month or two, like once they've started using them. And
Mm.
also in the future, something that I hope to do when we have more on ground volunteers in India is to actually train people within these marginalized communities
Mm.
to facilitate the dialogues themselves,
Mm.
which really like helps people within these communities emerge as leaders, and
Yeah.
further decentralizes that change. And I
Yeah.
feel that this is personally, I feel that it's a very sustainable model for change making. And um, to sort of make sure that there's not one leader, but like everyone can be a leader on their own right is something that I really value.
Yeah. So, Swara, this really throws me off to see, a young individual like you think so much, but there's so much learning out of it. So, if I have to just reiterate the 5 steps that I see, is first is to be curious and question as to why such practices are followed, and or what is it that you want to really change, and what I really liked is then moving to work with the community, understanding why they think that way, and also listening to their needs, which is so amazing. Many a times we try to impose what we think is right, but we miss listening to our customers or listening to people who we want to make the change for. The third was, of course, to reduce the cycle of dependency, or if I may say, to decentralize. And instead of making it a vertical, hierarchical organization, actually decentralize it so that each person is a leader in their own respect and drives the cause. The fourth thing that I absorbed here was that don't wrong them. So if you're trying to change somebody, and this is even relatable for your our day-to-day lives, if you are looking at changing some habits, something, then please don't wrong that habit or the person or wrong their thinking. Just give them information, give them facts, and empower them to make a choice, because the change that comes out of a choice is here to stay, it's permanent. And of course, last that you said, the fifth one, the most important one as well, is to engage with the community on an ongoing basis, to be persistent and to be there for them, hand holding them throughout the journey. Amazing, Swara. I think if each one of us who's looking at making that small change in the community puts these steps in places, we can definitely move ahead from working alone to having a community coming together for that particular cause. I have a question from the audience who says that who supported you at the start to take this very bold step? Who was that an external empowerment, or how did you really go about doing that?
I think I'd say that three categories of people. The first is
Okay.
definitely family, and just because I started having those conversations at home, like earlier on, and sort of asserting my beliefs and talking to my parents about this. By the time I started, I feel like my dad was one of the most vocal advocates of my work, and from early on, like where we couldn't, like we had really awkward conversations whenever I went up to him for a pill, like whenever I had period cramps, to my dad like actually driving me and being present at every single session. And I remember all the other male dignitaries, like, would usually stand at the back and observe, but dad would be in the
Yeah.
front, like distributing these kits from his own hands. So
Yeah.
I feel that having the support, like from my family, definitely meant a lot. I'd say friends, my cousin Shreya, my best friend Samiksha, they
Right.
were there with me, like, and they're still on our team and like leading the period society right since the beginning. So I feel that without their support and without them, like contributing so much, this initiative like probably wouldn't exist. And I'd also say that an actress is a huge part of this because they agreed to collaborate with us on sessions. They found places for us to hold sessions at in the beginning. And I definitely love the cloth pads because they're super affordable, like in the long term, and they are sourced from women in rural Maharashtra. So it really reduces cycle dependency and helped me in my own change making. So I feel that I definitely owe a lot of what the period society is to these people in the beginning.
Okay. Amazing. So, Swara, tell me, what's your vision going forward? How are you looking at scaling this period society, and where do you want to go really from here?
So in the future, I definitely hope to like take this organization or this movement across India and have period society chapters possibly in every state and union territory to carry on our work, and to also be able to fundraise or have the resources to provide period products to more communities in need. But if I talk about my ultimate vision, it's really to make sure that the government or entities that recognize the need for having conversations on menstruation and to really normalize it as a society so that one day, like as a nonprofit, we don't really have to exist anymore and we don't have to go in and have these conversations because parents are having it with their kids, educational institutions are having it with their students, and even men or people who don't menstruate like don't feel shy talking about periods, and it's just a very normal word, a very normal conversation to have. And also to make sure that the government and like other entities that recognize period products as basic needs. And definitely I've seen countries such as Scotland and New Zealand start programs to offer menstrual hygiene products free of cost to the population, and I feel that India should implement that too, just because period products shouldn't be a luxury for anyone, and their basic needs which often put a person's dignity into question. So that's the ultimate goal, or the ultimate sort of change that I hope to make with the society.
Amazing. So you make the society so independent that they don't need an NGO to support them. Amazing. Manpreet, thank you. Manpreet says great work, compliments not only for spreading awareness, but also great work for women empowerment. And we have a lot of messages for Swara saying Maruti is saying good job, Swara. Congratulations and keep it up. So guys, this is amazing. And I want to thank Swara. Before we really end the session, I want to share a very beautiful video that I came across, and that's my go-to video every time I think that I want to quit.
If you want to change the world, start off by making your bed. If you make your bed every morning, you will have accomplished the first task of the day. It will give you a small sense of pride, and it will encourage you to do another task, and another, and another. And by the end of the day, that one task completed will have turned into many tasks completed. Making your bed will also reinforce the fact that the little things in life matter. If you can't do the little things right, you'll never be able to do the big things right. And if by chance you have a miserable day, you will come home to a bed that is made, that you made. And a made bed gives you encouragement that tomorrow will be better. To pass SEAL training, there are a series of long swims that must be completed. One is the night swim. Before the swim, the instructors joyfully brief the students on all the species of sharks that inhabit the waters off San Clemente. They assure you, however, that no student has ever been eaten by a shark, at least not that they can remember. But you are also taught that if a shark begins to circle your position, stand your ground. Do not swim away. Do not act afraid. And if the shark, hungry for a midnight snack, darts towards you, then summons up all your strength and punch him in the snout, and he will turn and swim away. There are a lot of sharks in the world. If you hope to complete the swim, you will have to deal with them. So if you want to change the world, don't back down from the sharks. Over a few weeks of difficult training, my SEAL class, which started with 150 men, was down to just 42. There were now 6 boat crews of 7 men each. I was in the boat with the tall guys, but the best boat crew we had was made up of the little guys, the Munchkin crew, we called them. No one was over 5'5". The Munchkin boat crew had 1 American Indian, 1 African American, 1 Polish American, 1 Greek American, 1 Italian American, and 2 tough kids from the Midwest. They out-paddled, outran, and outswam all the other boat crews. The big men in the other boat crews would always make good-natured fun of the tiny little flippers the Munchkins put on their tiny little feet prior to every swim. But somehow these little guys from every corner of the nation and the world always had the last laugh, swimming faster than everyone and reaching the shore long before the rest of us. SEAL training was a great equalizer. Nothing mattered but your will to succeed, not your color, not your ethnic background, not your education, not your social status. If you want to change the world, measure a person by the size of their heart, not by the size of their flippers. The 9th week of training is referred to as Hell Week. It is 6 days of no sleep, constant physical and mental harassment, and one special day at the Mud Flats. The Mud Flats are an area between San Diego and Tijuana where the water runs off and creates the Tijuana Sloughs, a swampy patch of terrain where the mud will engulf you. It is on Wednesday of Hell Week that you paddle down in the mud flats and spend the next 15 hours trying to survive this freezing cold, the howling wind, and the incessant pressure to quit from the instructors. As the sun began to set that Wednesday evening, my training class, having committed some egregious infraction of the rules, was ordered into the mud. The mud consumed each man till there was nothing visible but our heads. The instructors told us we could leave the mud if only 5 men would quit. Only 5 men, just 5 men, and we could get out of the oppressive cold. Looking around the mud flat, it was apparent that some students were about to give up. It was still over 8 hours till the sun came up. 8 more hours.
Every time I feel I want to quit and I don't want to go ahead. And Swara, I want to thank you so much for coming down and showing us that small steps actually lead to a big movement and a big change. Do you have any last messages for all those young people who have a small little desire to bring about that change in the society and are just waiting with that desire, thinking what to do of it? What's your last message for them?
So firstly, thank you so much for having me today, and I really enjoyed the conversation, and it means a lot to me to be able to talk about this. But for anyone who has like even a little desire to make a change and is wondering how to do so, just realize that change doesn't have to be grandiose. You don't even have to work with a nonprofit like ours, like conduct a menstrual hygiene education session or something to make a change. Like, just if this is an example of something that you're passionate about, you could just have a conversation at home, normalize it within your own circle, normalize it within your family. Probably ask your domestic help what they use when they have their periods, and if they can't afford sanitary napkins, maybe provide them with that. And I think that is making a change. And just realize that even this like has a huge ripple effect because you're contributing towards making society a more period positive place. So likewise, if there's any issue, like be it gender empowerment, menstrual health education that you care about, I feel that even little things that you do can translate and do a huge impact. So I think don't look at the size of the action, but more of like the intention behind it. And there's an outlet for you to make a change, whether it's small or big. I think everything counts.
Well said, Swara. And to sum it up, I think for me, it was a very interesting conversation as well. And at the end of the day, if I have to bring about the change, like, Swara said, you start your day with the change you want to make and get the task completed. Find someone to help you through your life, through your journey of making that change. Respect everyone's thoughts and views and don't make them wrong. Life is not going to be fair all the time, and you are going to fail often. You are going to see yourself falling, but get up, take those risks again, step up, and when the times get tough, then reach out and collaborate with people who believe in your vision. Stand up against all the bullies who will judge you. Lift the people who are downtrodden, listen to them, listen to their needs, and never give up. So, if all of us do these things little by little, I'm sure the next generation and the generation that will follow will live a world that is a far better place than we are today and what we started off. So, guys, make that small change and move ahead. Keep at it and persist. Swara, thank you so much for coming. It really means a lot to all of us that you came down, spoke to us about your thoughts. Guys, thank you so much for coming. The ones who are watching us on Facebook as well as on the webinar, and people who are going to be watching the repost. Thank you so much for it. If you have more questions for Swara, she's not going away. If you want to volunteer with her, or if you have a cause that you want to take ahead, please leave your questions in the repost and we will come back to you with it. And last but not the least, for my new audiences, I am Dr. Hema Bajaj, and the platform Lose Your Blues Conversations is to celebrate and learn from a real life hero's journey. So if you're that real life hero, please reach out to me and we will discuss and share our learnings on this platform. Also, I am so inspired by Swara. I want to decentralize this initiative. So I'm going to be leaving the requirements on the post tomorrow as to volunteers who would want to volunteer for this platform itself. We are looking for at least minimum 2 volunteers who will help us sustain it and scale it up, because even if this platform can make a change in one person's life, I think we achieved our goal. So thank you so much, Swara. Thank you, Yatin, Dr. Yatin, for reaching out to me for Swara. And please keep at it. Bye, audience, and see you again, same time next week on Saturday. Bye, Swara.
Thank you so much. Bye.